Well, good morning. It is bright and early. Oh, and I hit a few more books on the Song of Solomon, and going through the dissertations, if that's the right word, there's a twist. In my initial start of the reading in this book, I assumed that the king was a likeness for Christ. But after, I think I'll have to read this dissertation, which is in the E. Bullinger's Companion, because this may be a likeness for Antichrist or carnal nature. I'm not sure. But to be fair, before I go on reading this book and assuming things, let me read this dissertation to be fair. So let me start. This is I was reading in the Living Bible Paraphrase, but this is in E.W. Bullinger's Companion Bible, and I think it's probably important to note. He said the scope of this book is determined by the structure of the book as a whole. The story gradually develops itself, and from the key which is found in the last chapter. The whole may be pieced together. When we talk about the last chapter, this made me think about the Antichrist and the deception. Because just like true in life, in the beginning we think that this king here is the likeness for God. Where it comes to find out, I will read further on, not so. As the whole may be placed together, which reforce has been added in order to connect the threads in the events. Let's see. So in the last chapter, there's going to be a flip. The king is not who is going to end up with this young lady in love. It's actually a shepherd boy who she's been espousing her love for all the time. There was a family living in Shulam consisting of a widowed mother, several sons, and one daughter, who maintained themselves by farming and pasturage. The brothers were particularly fond of their sister and took her under their special care, promising her prudence and virtue should be greatly rewarded by them. Let's see, in the course of time, while tending the flock, and according to the custom of the shepherds, restoring at noon beneath the tree for shelter against the Mediterranean sun, she met with a graceful shepherd. Now here is the likeness for the true Christ. A graceful shepherd youth, of whom she after would become espoused. He's a youth. He's new. He's the New Testament. One morning in the spring, this youth invited her to accompany him into the field. But her brothers, overhearing the invitation, was anxious for the reputation of their sister, sent her in order to prevent their meeting to take care of the vineyards. They sent her away where she couldn't have this meeting with this young shepherd who she was truly in love with. This would be the Old Testament, most likely. This would be the old way of thinking, the carnal. The damsel, however, consoled her beloved, and herself with the assurance that though separated bodily, indivisible ties subsequent between them, over which her brothers had no control. This is faith. This is being faithful. They can't control that. She loves this young shepherd boy. As she requested him to meet her in the evening. And as he did not come, she feared that some accident had befallen him on the way, and went in search of him, she and found him. This is Christ after he was resurrected on that cross. We can no longer see him. We're parted, but she's still professing this immense love for him. Now, in the evening, now was the only time in which they could enjoy each other's company, as during in the day the damsel was occupied in the vineyard. On one occasion, when entering the garden, this is when it gets interested, she accidentally came into the presence of King Solomon, who happened to be on a summer visit to that neighborhood. And it's got quotes here of where that states that in the Bible. Struck with the beauty of the damsel, the king conducted her into his royal tent, and there, assisted by his court ladies, devoured with alluring flatteries and promises to gain her affections, but without effect, because she's remaining faithful to the young shepherd boy, right? Released from the king's presence, the damsel soon sought an interview with her beloved shepherd. The king, however, took her with him to his capital in great pomp, in the hope of dazzling her with his splendor. But neither did this prevail, for while even there she told her beloved shepherd, who had followed her into the capital and obtained an interview with her, that she was anxious to quit the gaudy scene of her own home. The shepherd, on hearing this, praised her consistency in such manifestation of their mutual acknowledgement took place. Several of their court ladies were greatly affected by it. The king, still determined, if possible, to win her affections, watched for another favorable opportunity, and with flattery and allurements surpassing all that he had used before, tried to obtain his purpose. He promised to elevate her to the highest rank and raised her above all his concubines and queens if she would comply with his wishes. But faithfully to her espousals she refused all the overtures of the plea of her affections, which were pledged to another. The king, convinced at last that he could not possibly prevail, was obligated to dismiss her, and the shepherd, in company with her beloved shepherd, returned to her native place. On their way home, they visited the tree under which they had first met, and there renewed their vows of fidelity to each other. On her arrival safety at home, her brothers, according to their promise, rewarded her greatly for her virtuous conduct. And this note here is an important thing. It said, as always, the above is an interpretation. The application is an incentive to loyalty and fidelity to one who loved us and gave himself for us, and to stand fast in our love and loyalty to him in the face of the fiercest temptations and trials. Now, when I first read this, I said, oh boy, did I screw up when I started reading this book of Solomon. because there I was thinking that the king was the likeness for Jesus Christ. And then it struck me that, I had thoughts. I said, well, I got to get that first video, the number one of Solomon off, because there I was portraying the Solomon character as a likeness for Christ, when actually it's the young shepherd boy she's professing all these love sayings to. And the king is trying to woo her away from who she truly loves. And I was assuming that she was trading this love back and forth between the king. I was thinking, what? Did I screw that up? I need to get that video off and redo it. But I'm going to let that stand, because to me, that is this book is a beautiful example of the deception of what's taking place in our earth today, with the deception of the false Christ, the instead of Christ, the Antichrist, which is imagery, which is our carnal view of who and what Christ is. So I'm not going to take away the first video, but from now on, I read the Solomon story. Now that we know she is actually talking to the young shepherd who has given his all for her. And this story is going to be about her staying true to the shepherd and not giving in to the king, which would be the earthly Antichrist, which would be the instead of, which is playing the part of the things that try so hard to get the woman's affections. And so that being said, I'm going to let it stand, because I was taken in and deceived in the start of reading of this book. And in another dissertation in Matthew Henry, it talks about that confusion. It also mentions that the old Jewish people that used to teach his story wouldn't teach his story until the kids were 30 years old. You weren't allowed to read this story because it was so saucy, as it were. So a very interesting book. It only gets more interesting. And I think by my mistake, or my assuming the part that king was playing, that he was the same part as that shepherd, it threw me, just as the Antichrist and the carnal state is thrown by who we think the true Jesus is in this world. So I'm going to let that book stand, the first one. But now, as I continue on reading the Psalm of Solomon, given that we know now in the last of this book, we're going to understand that the king is not the character of Christ, but there's a young shepherd boy who she's really truly in love with, that she's staying faithful to. So with that being said, this video is going to be called Solomon's chapter 2, part 1, and then I'll get the next video. I'll actually get to reading the chapter 2. So thank you for bearing through me through this thing, and thank God that I took my own advice and I read several books, which is the best way to I'd be curious to see what this book here that I've been reading, if it confronts that the king is actually going to return her, and if he's not, then this end of this story is in some obscure book. Let's see, it was mentioned. Guy's name is C.D. Ginsburg Commentary, London, 1857. So, on the shoulders of other men we stand. So, that being said, I'll get on to the next video right after I film this one. Thank you for taking a listen to that.